Welcome back. Today we're breathing some much needed life into the world of my upcoming roguelike RPG, Tales for the Long Nights. You know, it's all well and good battling through relentless turn-based encounters, but even the fiercest mercenaries need a break from swinging swords and dodging death, so we're shifting gears and fleshing out some of the non-combat events that bring that little bit of tranquility into the chaos. In this episode, we'll be implementing a brand new gathering and item system, along with a delightful little fishing minigame. It's a great chance to catch your breath, both literally and metaphorically, before diving back into the long and dangerous journey ahead. Whether you're just foraging for materials or fishing for something more exciting than a soggy old boot, these moments of respite might be the key to your survival. So sit back, subscribe if you're interested and want to see more, and let's see how a little bit of peace can really punctuate the action and make the adventure just that much more rewarding. But before we dive into the episode, let's set the stage. My name's James. I'm a self-taught solo developer, and I've been building my first ever game, Tales for the Long Nights, for the past 15 months. It's a roguelike RPG team builder, where your job is to pull together a ragtag team of mercenaries and protect your travelling merchant patron as they travel through this ever-changing and hostile fantasy land. It draws inspiration for the roguelike and adventure elements from similar games like Slay the Spy that offer short and randomised runs, but we blend it with a more complex, turn-based action combat system and a bigger emphasis on events. The focus of the game is this MMO-like progression system for each run. There are hundreds of unique abilities, countless team combinations, and a huge number of randomized events and minigames. In any one run, you'll find yourself battling challenging combat encounters, gathering or fishing for food, as well as crafting or looting equipment for your team so that you can adventure further and survive the long nights ahead. Everything you need to survive the long journey is randomized, and dying will reset your run entirely, requiring you to have a completely different approach for each attempt depending on the mercenaries you meet, the abilities that you unlock, and the equipment that you obtain along the way. So, rather than subjecting the player to an hour-long and relentless grind of combat for each run, because, let's be honest, even the warriors need a break, we are adding some side activities to break up the action. But you know, these aren't just filler activities, they're critical to your progression. And by progression, I mean anything that helps your ragtag band of mercenaries survive the nightmare that you walk them into, or really anything that makes them that little bit more menacing on the battlefield. Now, this can take many forms, you know. It could be new gear for your mercenaries, which you could either find directly as loot or cobble together with some materials you gather along the way, because nothing really says preparation quite like crafting your own swords out of random bits of metal and sticks you find on the floor. Maybe these events will give you an opportunity to collect or upgrade the kind of abilities that your crew can use. You'll also be scavenging for food, because apparently people get grumpy without food during a multi-day trek through hostile terrain, and you'll be discovering new ways to patch up your team after a particularly rough skirmish. Now, this is important because when we talk about healing, my combat system is designed around the very noble art of not getting hit. Instead of dumping a bunch of healing spells into the game and breaking up the flow, I thought, you know, why not make the players plan ahead? You've got to read the enemy's intentions and strategize, mitigating the damage before it happens. But since life happens regardless and people do get hurt, our non-combat events will also offer, ways to patch up your team, either directly or in a more creative and maybe less obvious ways. As a kind of last port of call, if you can make it there, every quarter of the way through your journey you stumble upon a campsite, this haven where you can heal up and rest and engage in some more essential survival activities, like cooking, because there's nothing like a hot meal in the middle of nowhere to grant you a day-long buff for the journey ahead. Who knew stew was the key to success? When we set out to build these minigames, we didn't want them to just feel like an afterthought, so we created a variety of different scenes for each of them. So for the fishing scenes, there are lakes, rivers, and oceans, and they each offer their own unique selection of fish and the occasional special loot. This wasn't just about throwing in an environment and calling it a day. We tied this all directly into the terrain system for our map generation. For example, after crossing a river in an encounter, you might stumble upon a serene riverside fishing spot. This natural and seamless part of your journey rather than a random and disconnected minigame. Keeping the experience grounded in the world is key to me. It's all about making sure the journey flows like an actual adventure, not some haphazard hop from one location to the next. It's these small details that maintain the immersion and make the fantasy world feel alive. I'm really happy with how the fishing scenes turned out. They perfectly capture that peaceful and relaxing vibe we were aiming for. These non-combat moments are meant to offer a break from the action, but still feel like a part of the overall journey. Once the scenes were set, I moved on to the mechanics. Now, casting your line and aiming for the fish, it's all pretty standard stuff. Let's be honest, it's tough to make fishing in games feel completely unique. Fishing is, it's just fishing. My system shares a lot in common with probably a lot of what you've seen before, but the difference I wanted to add was some unpredictability. Just when you think you've got it, the fish can suddenly dive to the bottom of the water, and that's when the complexity comes in. You need to quickly release your reel and follow it down. It's just that little twist that keeps you on your toes. Once you've reeled in the fish, we track how well you do and we grade the attempt. This is to determine the rarity of the catch, as well as any extra loot you might pull up from the depths. There's even a rare chance of snagging a crate or a chest packed with equipment and valuable materials. As you progress through the game, the fishing encounters get trickier, but the rewards get better. Once caught, the fish can be filleted for their meat, which becomes a key ingredient for the cooking system. These meals, they're not just for show, they can heal your team at campsites and provide crucial buffs for the next day's journey ahead. To make all this work, I needed to build a robust item system. So using Unity's scriptable objects, I created this core system for managing items alongside supporting systems for inventory management, loot generation, and container items like chests. After all, what's the point of pulling up a chest if you've got nowhere to store the loot or no way to even open it? Now, once the fishing and item systems were up and running, I moved on to building the gathering functionality. The game revolves around 3 main crafting materials to keep it simple. There's metal, timber, and fabric. You can pick these up from encounter loot, merchants, or events, but I wanted to give players more control. So I added these gathering nodes on the map that you travel, specific places that you can head to when you're hunting for better crafting materials. Each gathering node will randomly select one of the 3 materials you're collecting, and you'll play a very short minigame to collect it. To make these nodes more worthwhile compared to regular encounters that give you additional loot as well as crafting materials, I boosted up the quality and rarity of the materials that you'll gather here. This scene I built can be used for mining, woodcutting, or skinning, and while it's a simple setup for now, I plan to expand it with different environments based on the terrain that you're travelling through. I quickly cobbled together some placeholder gathering tools, nothing fancy, just enough to get the job done. And then I built a couple of gathering spots across the environment and got to work building the animations for the mining, woodcutting, and skinning. Again, they're just placeholder at the moment, but they work as a proof of concept. Again, I think this scene's come out really well. It takes you away from that combat encounter, wide-angle combat map view and just puts you down into the scene, puts you into the environment. I feel like I've really nailed the design for these secondary scenes. The fishing and the gathering and the event scenes, they should really be the grounding element in the journey. But let me know what you think about them in the comments down below. I do read every single comment. After building the gathering scene, I put together this basic minigame. The fewer attempts you use to gather the materials, the better the quality of the loot. And because it's an RPG, you'll occasionally find these bonus items. Geodes from mining, magpies' nests from woodcutting, or adventurers' packs from skinning. Because really, what's more RPG than a goat carrying loot and a bus fare? And with that, this gathering system's fully implemented. I'll be adding in more rare kind of secondary loot in the future, like special crafting recipe materials, cooking ingredients and consumables to make this more rewarding. But obviously the benefit to these nodes over something like a combat encounter is that you're not losing health when you're traveling through it. And that's all for this devlog. If you've stuck around until the very end, I just want to say a really huge thank you. I really genuinely appreciate the time and support that I get. It means the world to me as a solo developer who might not have other people to use as a sounding board or to bounce ideas off. So that's kind of what the outlet is for these videos. If you're enjoying the journey so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below with your thoughts on the game. I do read every comment and I respond to most of you, so let me know what you think about the direction of the game, and your feedback will really help shape the direction we take it in. In the next episode, we've got some really big plans. We're rebuilding the UI from scratch, we're enhancing the map exploration system that drives the narratives of each run, and we're developing these mechanics that I've kind of hinted at in this episode for campsites and boss fights, and taking a closer look at the crafting system. So make sure that you stay tuned and subscribed, and I'll see you next episode.